Okay, so we're looking at 2017 question number 2, which deals with marginal revenue product and marginal resource costs. And this problem looks a little bit different, but like all problems that start off with a table, you should really try to look and understand what's happening with the table before answering all the questions and figuring out the different costs that are associated with what they're talking about here. So this problem starts off with, it says the table below shows the output of a firm produces different amounts using different capital inputs here and labor inputs. It says the markets for capital and labor are perfectly competitive. The rental rate of capital is $75 per unit, and the wage rate is $200 per unit. In the short run, capital is fixed and labor is a variable. So here's your fixed cost right here. So as we check this out, I want you to understand that this output right here related to the labor is 1 unit of capital, which costs $75 for that unit, and it stays fixed throughout all production levels. When we go to 2 units of capital, that's going to be 75 times 2. It's going to be $150 fixed through all output levels that are there. The one that changes is the labor that changes, and each labor is a $200 cost. So I'm just going to write that up here, that's a $200 cost. This is a $75 fixed cost. This is per unit, per labor. And this is a $150 fixed cost here. Okay. First question asked, it says that the firm uses 1 unit of capital and 1 unit of labor. Will it be operating with constant increasing or decreasing returns to scale? It says explain using numbers from the table. So that's A. Okay, and it's asking us with using 1 unit of labor, all right, that's here, and 1 unit of capital, that's here. This is that 10 output that I'm going to have here. Are we going to be experiencing constant increasing or decreasing returns to scale? So in order for us to answer that, I need to take into consideration the next level of output that I'm going to be creating. So at 1 unit of labor and 1 unit of capital, I'm producing 10. If I go to 2 units of labor and 2 units of capital, I'm going to be producing 50. So going from 10 to 50 is more than doubles my output at this point. So I'm going to be experiencing an increasing returns to scale. So it says explain using numbers from the table. So increasing returns to scale. Production goes from 10 to 50 output. Okay. B says now we're using 2 units or 3 units of labor and 2 units of capital. So I'm producing at this level right here. So just to take a look at what that's going to look like, well, if I'm using 3 here, all right, 200, 200, 200, that's going to be 3 times 200. That's going to be my labor cost, my labor cost right there. And if I'm using 2 units of capital, 2 times 75, that's 150. My total costs are going to be $750 at this level of operation right here, producing 75 units. Okay. Now the question comes up. Let's see if I can read this. The question comes up, calculate the marginal product for the 3rd unit of labor. All right. It says, show your work. Okay. So I go from 2 units of labor producing with 2 units of capital, 50. Okay. And I go from there, my output goes, once I add a 3rd unit of labor, my output goes from 50 to 75. So my marginal product is going to be 25. So I would show that by taking the 75, the new output 75 minus the old output, which would be 25, divided by the number of inputs that we had, and that was 3 units minus the original 2, which would give us 1, which would end up giving us a marginal product of 25. And that's for B1 here. All right. B2 asks the question, Did the firm experience diminishing marginal returns with the addition of the third unit of labor? Explain using numbers from the table. Well, let's see what kind of output that we have here. So with 1 unit of labor, all right, output equals 20, all right. With 2 units of labor, output equals 50, all right. So my marginal product went to 30, and then with 3 units of labor, my output equals 75. So I went from 30, all right, 20 to 30 to 25. So I am experiencing, yes, I am experiencing diminishing marginal returns, and explain using numbers from the table I just did. Okay, I can see that I'm going down here. Number 3 says calculate, or B3 says calculate the firm's average total cost for its current level of production. Show your work. Well, I already showed you what my costs were. My output is 75, so for 3 I would take 750, my total cost, divided by my output, and that would give us $10 for my average total cost. Oops, average total cost. All right. Now 4 is probably the most confusing question in the whole lot here. Okay, it says if the firm's output is sold in a competitive market, and think about it, competitive market. In a competitive market, I have my Mr. Dart, my marginal revenue, demand, average revenue, price curve going. I have my marginal cost curve going through that. And I have my average total cost at its lowest point hitting that, where marginal cost crosses the marginal revenue and shooting up there. So that's the point that I'd be setting that price at the lowest point for my my average total cost there. So it says if the firm's output is sold in a competitive market, what is the lowest output price at which the third unit of labor would be hired? Okay, so I would have to take a look and try to find out, kind of backward engineer how we're going to look at the costs of this overall output at this third level. So the way to do this is, the easiest way that I've figured out how to do this is just to take each unit of labor and what that resource cost is, all right, and to divide that by the output that's taking place. Okay, and if we're operating in a perfectly competitive marketplace, that should equal our marginal cost at that point, and our marginal cost would equal our average, our lowest average total cost in the production. So for example, with 1 unit of labor, at 1 unit of labor, it cost me $200 for that unit of labor. My output would be 20. So if I took 200 and divided it by 20, well, then I would have a marginal cost of $10. All right, this would be my first one. This would be my second one right here. My second unit of labor costs $200, and my marginal product is 30. So 200 divided by 30 is about $6.67. So if I were to sell, my lowest price that I would sell for at that point would be $6.67. And at my third unit of labor, which would cost me $200, my marginal product is 25. Divide that by 25, and my marginal cost would be $8. So if we were in a perfectly competitive, if we were a firm operating in a perfectly competitive labor market, my marginal cost, my average total cost would be at its lowest here. That's where my quantity would be, all right, for the firm producing here. And that would be my price right here for the firm as well. Okay, so and looking at that price at that third worker would be $8. So that would answer the question, what is the lowest output price at which the third unit of labor would be hired? Would be that point right there, which means this: at $200, my marginal resource cost, right, my next additional amount of that resource cost would be $200. My marginal revenue product would need to equal that $200, all right? That would need to equal $200. How do we figure out if that equals, or what price would I have to sell that item for to equal $200? Well, I'm bringing in a marginal product of 25. So that's why we take that 200 and divide it by 25, and we get that $8. Okay, so I'd have to sell it for at least $8 to get my $200 in marginal revenue product, all right, to equal my marginal resource cost. All right, I hope that helps out. Explaining it a little bit, detail like this gets you kind of thinking about that marginal revenue product and that marginal resource cost and the concepts behind it. All right, guys, take care.